Welcome, everyone. See a lot of familiar faces, and we're really happy that you're joining us again for our Civic Dialogue series. We'll just wait just a few more seconds here. I think we've got a couple more folks look like they're trying to get in. All right. Well, again, welcome everyone. I know a lot of you are joining us for hopefully the fourth presentation. We're into the fourth presentation of 7, and then, as you know, we will have 2 deep dives after our series ends on the 30th of October. But today I just want to welcome all of you again. My name is Patty Robinson. I am the the faculty director of Civic and Community Engagement at College of the Canyons, and I'm joined by my co-host here, Kimberly Rosenfeld from Cerritos College, and I don't believe our other person who's been involved with the series, Jan Connell, is on at the moment, but we also want to thank Jan for all the work that she's been doing with regard to this series. So today we have a very special guest that I want to introduce. He is a personal friend of mine, a colleague, just an amazing person, and I don't know how else to say it, just a dear friend, Verdis Robinson. I met Verdis about 5 years ago when I started working with Civic Engagement at College of the Canyons. And the way that we met was that I went to my very first CLDE meeting, Civic Learning Democratic Engagement National Meeting. And I met several amazing people at that conference, but one of whom was Verdis. And as soon as he and I met, it was like an instant kind of connection. We just bonded, and we have bonded ever since. And I've been fortunate enough to work with Verdis on multiple projects since then. And so he is not just a colleague, but he really is a very dear friend. And I'd like to go ahead and read his formal biography now, and then he will get started talking about civic engagement in community colleges. So Verdis Robinson serves as an associate at the Kettering Foundation in Dayton, Ohio. Verdis is also a civic engagement consultant specializing in the work of community colleges. He is the former director for community college engagement at Campus Compact, where he directed the Democracy Commitment initiative as part of his portfolio, and continues to work on this work that he began 3 years ago as the national director, or at that time as the national director of TDC. He was expanding membership resources and programming opportunities for for community colleges at that time. Before becoming national director of TDC, Verdis was a tenured assistant professor of history and African American studies at Moreau Community College in Rochester, New York, where he taught web-enhanced, writing-intensive service learning history courses for 10 years. Additionally, Verdis is a fellow of the Aspen Institute's Faculty Seminar on Citizenship and the American and Global Polity, and the National Endowment for the Humanities Faculty Seminar on Rethinking Black Freedom Studies, the Jim Crow North and West. He is also a public scholar of Humanities New York. Verdis also serves on the advisory boards for the All-In Campus Democracy Challenge, Bringing Theory to Practice, Students Learn, Students Vote Coalition, and the Reacting Consortium Board of Reacting to the Past. He holds a BM in Voice Performance from Boston University. Yes, this man can sing. A BS in Cum Laude, an MA in History from SUNY College at Brockport in New York, and an MA in African American Studies from SUNY University at Buffalo. And what he doesn't have on the bio that I'm reading, he also now is in seminary school. So with that, I would love and to welcome again a good friend, Verdis Robinson.
Thank you. I recognize some of you from going out to California, and too bad I'm not out there right now. This is a different world for all of us. I used to travel like every 2 weeks, including coming out to California at least 2 or 3 times a year. But all of my luggage is in the basement. I have no trips planned at all, and all of my interactions with people across the country is now over Zoom. I don't have to tell you what impact that is having to our community colleges as well. I'll get into that. As nationally, I have been inquiring with many of our colleagues and peers across the country at community colleges right now. And my goodness, my heart goes out to everyone. I wish I were in the trenches helping out. But at the same time, we're doing it. You know, I mean, of all people who can roll with punches, who can, adapt and innovate, community college faculty and staff have been doing that for many, many years. So, but that being said, what I want to talk a little bit today is to talk about this whole notion of democracy's colleges. We are now, because of the pandemic's impact on us, community college faculty and staff, trying to figure out, okay, well, where do we go from here? What does the future look like? But we're forgetting about democratic education. We're forgetting about democratic learning, not really forgetting about it, but kind of putting it, like we have other priorities that we have to work out right now. And of course, retention is a big concern right now. That has to do with access, equity, and everything that the pandemic is bringing out, not just in our society, I mean, not just on our campuses, but in society in general. We're seeing inequities really being spotlighted in society, but we're also seeing them in community colleges coming out as well, in addition to higher ed in general. So the first thing I want to talk about is the work that we have been doing with community colleges as far as civic engagement is concerned. And then get into how the pandemic changed all of that. And then get into some of the conversations that we are currently having. My role as a consultant is one of the casualties of the pandemic. I'm a consultant now. and that wasn't, before the pandemic, I was not a consultant. I had a position. And now the position is no longer there. There's a lot of changes happening. And so I would love to really bring us back a little bit into why community colleges were founded in the first place. I argue with people left and right about it and whatnot, but they were to democratize higher ed. Basically, that's the one-liner I give. Community colleges were created to democratize higher education and to give more people access to the American dream. And the American dream, yes, you can have access to the American dream without a college education. But as we went on with the 50s and 60s and everything, when more people were became educated, and for some of the top jobs, and even some of the working class jobs started to require college degrees in order for more access to what Thomas Jefferson called the let me see. He didn't call it property, but the pursuit of happiness. That's the American dream, right? The pursuit of happiness. We all know what that means. The more money you have, the more. No, I'm just joking. But seriously, that was Thomas Jefferson, his thinking. But then we kind of democratized that. Now, when we get into community colleges being founded and being called junior colleges, and the whole history that we have with Joliet College in Illinois, along with that came a stigma. Because I believe it was the University of Chicago, when more people started to, clamor for admission, they were just like, we don't want to let the wrong ones in. So let's just divide this up and have the first 2 years, the general studies, the survey courses, and have them weed out the people who can, either, leave there and get jobs or go on for higher education and transfer into our institution. That's where that stigma started. And so, and unfortunately, we have been paying for that ever since. I mean, I used to even take it in and be like, well, I just teach at a community college, and people had to correct me. What do you mean you just teach at a community college? And then when I started, I mean, that was my first couple of years. Um, then when I really started to gain more students and see the diversity of our students, ranging for some students who are like 16 years old, all the way up to 70 years old, and sometimes more than that. And I'm starting to really understand our role as community college educators and the importance of our role, and also thinking about our students not as coming from across the state or from different communities, but they are the community in which our community college serves. We like to separate them from being a part of the community. We like to say our students are on our campus, but when they leave our campuses, the majority of them who are not on dorms, and majority of our campuses do not have dorms, where do they go? Where do they spend the majority of their time? Not on the campus, but they spend it in the community in which the community college serves. The majority of their time is spent off of our campuses. And now with the pandemic and COVID, and a lot of our campuses, most of our campuses, I think all of California community colleges have gone virtual. What that campus life is missing now. And not only that, but some of our students really thrived with the in-person, one-on-one, sometimes group on group, to keep them motivated, to keep them going, and also connections. And we're missing all of that. I used to teach online classes. And by the way, I'm going to get into civic engagement in a second. I used to teach online classes, and I was trying to get my African American studies classes to go online because it was hard to get a diversity in that class, because some of my white students did not feel comfortable in a class about African Americans, and predominantly with African Americans in there talking about issues of slavery and racism and things of that nature. And the online class was a barrier that they could feel comfortable, if you will. Things have changed, let me tell you. This is about 5 or 6 years ago, and now everyone's just like, yeah, I want to talk about this. Very, very different 6 years ago. But even in my own department, I was blocked for years saying that online learning is the bane of education. Now it's like, okay, see the shift? There's a shift there. And, but at the same time, while we're trying to shift this whole concept of pedagogies and making sure that our students do not fall through the cracks, because a lot of them are right now falling through the cracks. They really, really are. A lot of them are taking their classes in their cars on cell phones because of different issues. Again, I don't need to tell you that all the issues that are going on. And sometimes I think we need to just talk about it. We just need to okay, this is what I'm seeing. Are you seeing this? Because this is all new for all of us, right? So, but while we're trying to concentrate on, and also, by the way, at the beginning of all this, because I'm a consultant with the Kettering Foundation now, and they brought me on as a community college expert. And, at first I was just like, yeah, they're predicting influx on enrollment because, the economy's down, and people are going to be, coming to our campuses in droves. So, we were at a deficit. We're in a deficit of students. We're in a deficit of budget crisis on all of our campuses across the nation. Community colleges were in a deficit. And this is going to help us. This is going to boost us up, and more people are going to be coming to our campuses and across the board. That's not what we're seeing. On some campuses are saying, "Oh, we have a boost in enrollment." Those are like in the Appalachian Mountains of Maryland. They're seeing a boost in enrollment. Otherwise, there's a dip that I'm seeing across the nation. There's a decline in enrollment for many different factors, including the fact that a lot of us are virtual, and a lot of our students are saying, I'm going to cut this. I'm going to wait this out until, we can come back, to face-to-face, because online learning and even virtual learning takes a lot of discipline. There's a learning curve with all of this, as well as some people are just not virtual online learners. I happen to be one of them. And I was an online instructor. Learning does not do it for me, So I can empathize with that. So, and also some of them were on the front lines. Some of them have dealt with trauma. I mean, again, they're not being removed from their communities. They're still in their communities. And a lot of our students are dealing with trauma right now. And also being on the front row, some of them didn't have remote work. Some of them were like, yeah, that's nice that other people can work from home. You have to come in. So some students were battling that. The uncertainty. Some students were quitting jobs because they didn't want to. I mean, there's a lot of that our students had to deal with that a lot of other students didn't have to deal with. Some students were sent home. Some students were just like, I'm already home. Where am I going? So a lot of our students were. And not to and then the climate issues that are going on, particularly in California, particularly in the southern United States, even up here in Vermont, where I'm in right now, still are dealing with climate issues. There's a lot going on, and also we're in an election season. Our students, and not only that, but some of our students were out in the streets in June, in July, in August. Some of them are out there right now, with Black Lives Matter, or sometimes the converse. We have Proud Boys. Yeah, we have Proud Boys in our classrooms too. So how are we dealing with all of this? And trying to make sure that our students do not fall through the cracks, that when the checks come out, because they will go out, that they will come back to our online classes and or our virtual classes, when we had a hard time with that before COVID. So how do we make sure that all this is happening while we're educating for democracy? This is a conundrum. It really, really is, but it's so related. If we can say that the success in the classroom is success in the community, it's empowered in their community, it's empowered in their in who they are, that they are not at a second class institution, but a second chance institution. I mean, how do we make sure that our students realize their worth as well as their power, particularly now when a lot of their power is intentionally being stripped away from them? I mean, intentionally. We had a problem before. I don't want to get partisan and things like that, but the issue is student voting, student participation in election has been a partisan issue for a while now, because a lot of people believe that you, as community college professionals, are indoctrinated in this liberal, bleeding heart liberal wave of thinking, and trying to change our students and changing our history, and you talk about decoding our history, and I mean, think about it. For especially as a history professor at a community college, I don't think I went deep enough now. And now that our education and the way that we educate and what we educate is now being targeted bipartisan, bipartisan efforts. And I'm not saying Trump's campaign, because when I say partisan, it's much bigger than Trump. It's much bigger than that. He's only one man. Sorry, and he's a tall man. I'm kind of short, but but at the same time, it's much bigger than that, and it has been going on for a long time now. So how do we combat that as well? By and also staying nonpartisan, because we are in public institutions. We have to. Um, so, so that piece of it is why a lot of our campuses don't really go into voter engagement, or don't really support that, because of that fear of being labeled partisan. And there's ways that we have developed to go around that. But at the same time, we are dealing with issues of race right now. Yeah, we've been dealing with it for a long time, but now it's really coming out, and people are really curious. People are wondering how come they never learned about Juneteenth. People are saying like, wait a minute, Tulsa massacre. Oh, Black Wall Street. And people are saying Indigenous people's history of the United States. How come we've never read this or read that perspective? And students are curious. They want to talk about it. They want to read about it. They want to engage it. A lot of them came out of quarantine to march. I mean, took big risks to march, because they felt something. They cared about something, and they came out, and now they want to engage that. And the only place that they are engaging right now is social media. And that is not a good place to engage, these issues and these concepts that can be engaged in our classrooms, on our campuses, in English classes, in sociology classes, in political science classes, in biology classes, in economic classes. They can be engaged right now. But when we are trying to just, hold on to them in our classes and just teach the bare minimum, and having to rethink how we teach, and it's difficult, isn't it? To even think about, okay, now that this is happening, how do we tweak how we teach? How do we integrate what's relevant, what's going on? How do we do that? And also, not to forget the community needs. We're forgetting about, sometimes we forget about, yes, our students are in the community, but if we had food pantries before, guess what? We need them even more now. If we had, nonprofit organizations in our communities that needed our students, to fulfill roles that they were fulfilling before, guess what? They need them even more. And some of them are closing down right now. And some of them are saying, okay, but now because of the pandemic, we have to shift how we even operate. We have to shift how we did our services to the community. We have to shift all of that. And so service learning is an issue right now of how we do this and how we keep our students safe, but also that the students are needing some of the services. So there's a whole big shift that needs to happen, and it was happening, but it is almost like we need to happen. It needs to happen warp speed to get to, okay, here's an issue. And have our students help solve that issue. The project based, that needs to happen now. It was on its way, shifting service learning model to more of a project based, solution oriented, not just serving in a food kitchen, but why is this an issue in the first place, and how do we get to the root of it, and how do we go to City Hall, how do we get to the board councils, how do we, instead of putting band-aids on open wounds, heal those wounds. And we were getting there. We were going there. I see Jay Houston there, and Jay was going there and trying to get people there, and Patty and things of that nature. But it's almost like we need to go there warp speed because of the needs are so great, or greater now than ever before. And how do we get our students involved in that? How do we get our students involved in the solution process? Because I don't know about you and your bandwidth, but I'm tired. It's like what the month and a half into the school, and it's like, wow. So how do we empower them to get them to the table to be part of the planning stages, and not that we do all the planning and here's a nice pretty package for you to do, but how do we involve them into that? Because again, like I said, with community colleges, they're not, and 9 times out of 10, I know California is a little different. And, sometimes it takes an hour to get a couple of miles. I understand that. But 9 times out of 10, they are the community. They are the community. So how do we involve them in now, into the planning, into the service, into the engagement, and have them help lead the way there? We are learning a lot of stuff about social media, about Zoom technology, about chat rooms and things like that, that they have been doing for a long time now. We're learning something about TikTok and the use of those things to get messages out, to get in a very short amount of time, to get people to feel, to get people to laugh, yes, but our students are using these to gain and broaden their base for organizing. They're organizing using TikTok. They're organizing using, not Facebook anymore, but a lot of my generation are using Facebook to organize. We're using these modes to organize. So how can we adapt our what goes on for our campus life, as well as in our classroom, to do that? In addition to making sure that we provide the high quality education that we have been providing all these years. How do we do this? Is the question that we brought about, I think was it yesterday? Oh my gosh, it was yesterday, wasn't it? No, 2 days ago, okay. On Wednesday, we brought together a group of, and I'll say this much, and then I'll open up to Q&A. And I see the chat is blowing up, and and I haven't been in there, so excuse me for that. Before the pandemic, I was talking about the ways to align civic engagement and civic learning into institutional priorities. So workforce development, equity, access, and inclusion, diversity, and enrollment, graduation, retention, and how do we sneak civic engagement into those priorities that are already being, best practiced by AACC and League of Innovations and Achieving the Dream, and you're familiar with those organizations, right? Yes, nods, no? Achieving the Dream, the American Association of Community Colleges, people who are leading the way for community college priorities. And let me tell you, and I know this is recording, but I'll tell it to them too, because I was there in DC. And the one that has all the community colleges as members is the American Association of Community Colleges, and they'll be the first people to tell you that they don't do civic engagement. We don't do civic engagement, sorry. And I'm sitting up here like, what? So a couple of days ago, we brought AACC to the table, Achieving the Dream to the table. We brought Phi Theta Kappa to the table. We brought the League of Innovations to the table with civic engagement professionals. So we had Patty there, we had people from Arizona, New York, New Jersey, um, uh, Texas, Utah, who are on the grounds, in the trenches, civic engagement professionals, as well as people who serve other organizations that work with community colleges like Campus Compact. Like, and we were talking about, okay, what are we doing now? What do we do? And really seeing the need to like share, the need to collaborate, to commiserate, to have a network. We need this kind of network regionally. We need this kind of network in California where people can get together on calls like this and say, this is what we're doing. What are you doing? And say, okay, can you send me that? Can you send me your template for this? That didn't quite work on my campus. Maybe I can adapt that to meet the needs of my culture. We need to collaborate. We don't need to be in our silo saying, well, and for our presidents, no offense if any presidents on the call today, but one thing I experienced is presidents love to come to civic engagement professionals and say, give me a list. Give me a bulleted list of everything you're doing so that when I get to meetings, I can brag and say, this is what we're doing. But is it really being supported? Is it really being institutionalized? Is it being integrated into our curriculum so that it's not like 20 or 30 or 40 people who come to our events, but when we have thousands on our campus? Thousands on our campus, and only 20 or 30 or 40 people are being served civically. Really interesting, right? So I'll say this much, and then I'll open up for questions and answers. Where I see that civic engagement and community college students really being impacted, and some of my former students who worked with me and were part of the planning processes are now opening up their own projects and initiatives in their own communities. And it's just amazing to see, but it's only a sprinkle. The rest of them are moving away, moving out, going on with their lives, and it's hard to trace and track and see if our work really had an impact or not. But way that I see it, whether or not, because sometimes it's not measurable in the 2 or 3 or 4 or sometimes 5 years that they're on our campuses. Sometimes it happens after. It happens when they move on, when they transfer on. Sometimes it happens when they get our certificate and they get into their jobs, and then you see some of that happen. Sometimes it doesn't happen. Some of our students never become. I'm not saying voters, because some of our students cannot be voters right now, but some of them are never engaged. But the way that I see it is when it becomes a graduate requirement. When students get credit for it. And I'm saying that, some people are just like, they shouldn't have to get credit for it. It should just be something that they just do because of the right thing to do. I'm sorry, but our community college students, if they're not getting credit for it, for one thing, they're not getting financial aid for it. That's another thing. That's a federal thing. If they're not getting credit for it, chances are they're just like, I want to devote my time, and a lot of time that I have is like split between family and work and everything else, and devote my time to something that's going to propel me to my goal. And my goal is to get my degree or to get a job or to move or to transfer. If it's not in that pathway, if civic engagement and civic learning is not in that pathway, it's not going to reach the masses on our campuses. It's just not. It's going to reach the people who are privileged to have the extra time and the interest to do it. And that's our honor students. It's our, people who are interested. I want to be the next governor. Is the people that we have one-on-one connections with and say, hey, have you ever considered, and doing invitations to? But we cannot do invitations to 15,000 people on our campuses. But if it is a part of the civic pathways, or the guided pathways that most of our colleges have adopted. And guess what? Civic professionals, civic engagement professionals, civic learning professionals were not at the table when they were redoing that curriculum. We weren't. I was not there, even nationally. And I was like knocking on doors like, what's going on? Y'all revamping the community college curriculum across the nation. And one of the again, going back to the reason for why community colleges were created in the first place, we weren't at the table. Democracy was not at the table and still is not being at the table. Well, hopefully, by getting people from AACC, League of Innovations, and to talk with people who are doing this, who are in the trenches like you are, and to people who work with people who are in the trenches, having all those people at the same table, maybe we can make some headway to say that this is so important to our students. This is very vital to the very survival of our students. They need to learn and understand ways to impact change, ways to speak truth to power. And they can do that in our classes. If they have let me stop preaching for a second, but I was about to get preachy. If they have a requirement that they have to do oral communications class, which is a requirement in most colleges, or at least that competency is a requirement. Why not influence that by saying that they have to deliver a speech at a city council or a school board meeting, or or even give a mock speech that they would deliver on an issue that matters to them to their peers. Get into the habit of doing that while fulfilling requirements for courses. Not only that, but making sure that that even that student life, which is I want to talk to my student life people right now and saying, how are you doing this? How are we doing student life now that you can't say here's pizza, free pizza. I mean, that's not work. It can't work anymore, right? Or so how are we getting students engaged now? And believe it or not, they are working on it. And if you're they're working on it. They're being innovative right now. And hopefully around the elections. But after November, what do we do? What will be the next issue? Because elections will be over, not really, but we all know what's going to happen with all of that. But I'm praying and whatever to make sure that we have peace after November. But we'll see. I'm lighting my candles every night, every day for that. But after that, what are the issues that are going on? White supremacy culture won't go anywhere unless we address it head on, unless we admit that it's there in our society and dismantle it. Education can do that. Higher ed can do that. Community college can do that. We can do that. I believe we can do that. But that's why a lot of them are marching in the streets right now. So how do we do this? I don't have an answer for you. I wish I had a magic wand and be like, this is how you do it. It's different for different campuses and even in different classrooms. But at the same time, we won't get to really get to that innovation unless we share what we're doing, share what is working, share what is not working. And so that's what we need to do nationally for community colleges, because no one will do it for us. The League of Innovations won't do it for us. AACC won't do it for us. Phi Theta Kappa may, but again, just the honor students on our campuses. Just look out for opportunities, and also just think about different ways. If we can create a national network, shoot, I'll volunteer and lead it. I have my own Zoom and everything. We can have Zoom meetings, but feel free to email me what's ideas, and not just community colleges, but we have to think about the feeder schools. We have to think about our 4-year brothers and sisters who, when our students are done and after we have educated them, guess what? A lot of them are going to transfer to them. How can we make sure that we are working in tandem, and that also that is incentive for students to not only graduate from our institutions, but also to move on to 4 years, which in the next few years is going to determine success or not. And my email address is verdislrobinson, just all one word, @gmail.com. And with that, I'm going to stop because I've been on my soapbox for about 40 minutes now. And as you can see, I'm very, very passionate about this work, and I believe on it, for one thing, because I saw it firsthand with my students in the classroom. So, and I'm sure that there's a bunch of there's a bunch of questions in there. And if someone can help me lift some of those out, any questions that were directed at me.
Yeah, Verdis, we've been watching. I'm wondering if folks would like to go ahead and we've got a lot of comments here. I'm wondering if folks would like to go ahead and just write in some questions right now into the chat. And so that way Kimberly and I can see what questions you're putting in at this moment and then start from there. And I just want to reiterate what Verdis was talking about with guided pathways. And certainly that is so incredibly important that we start to think in terms of the work with guided pathways, but bringing in that civic engagement component, which really is missing. And I agree completely with what he's saying, is that if we are going to try and make this work in the community college system, it has to be connected to something that every single person is working on. So I'm looking here.
And so there's a question about a national movement. And it was, is that a quote? I'll lead it, or Bianca, are you volunteering?
I think it's both, Verdis. I'm in if you're in. Let's
All
talk.
right, let's go.
That's what we got to do.
Yeah. And what could it look like, and especially that now that a lot of us are and Hester, thanks for coming. And feel free to get in contact with me. One thing that that we used to do is that we used to have this this thing called the Democracy Commitment. It was an initiative in which there was a membership, and there was and like presidents signed off on it. They paid like $1,000 a year to be a part of it, and it was even like pulling teeth for that to get $1,000 from people. People just like, for what? But what it did was it provided convening spaces, a network for people to do what I'm suggesting, share, come together and come with best practices, say what is working, what is not working, and really kind of empower community college professionals, and also support the work being done and provide community college specific resources. Because what a lot of us were doing was we were taking 4-year resources and what I call hacking them. Have you ever done that? Took like something that was clearly for a 4-year school and like took things out and you know, that takes a lot of time, and we do it all the time. And it's like, so what if we had something that spoke to the community colleges and not directly? So we started to create some of that. It didn't really work out because no one wanted to house it basically and support it financially. So if and it takes a lot of grants, and grants weren't coming in, and it means, so if this were a national network, it will be something that will be voluntary. In other words, it would be easier if there was no membership fee, like institutional membership fee, because it's even difficult to get money just to do our civic engagement work, let alone for a membership to something, especially right now. So and so what it could look like would be convening opportunities, meeting places opportunities, workshops, webinars, and things like that for people to share maybe even some virtual conferences, but it will be community college specific. Right now, that's not going on at all for community colleges specifically. And so it would be, you know, a group of people making sure that that happens in their spare time, but it's still resume work and CV work though.
Verdis, we have a question. How do we democratize campus student organizations and activity on our campuses? At times, our colleges can be hostile towards student engagement and participation if it differs with the college culture and world view of college administrators, faculty, etc.
The way that I have done that is to speak the language of the administration on our campuses. If we say democracy, politics, and stuff like that, that's not their language. Their language is enrollment, retention, completion. That's how you do it. And saying that, you know, and that's one way of doing it, I would say. And also some of the newer administrators, because there's a lot of turnover. Some of the newer administrators, you have to, I mean, if you're not one of them, understand that they're under, they don't have the luxury to just do whatever they want with the money that they have or with budgets. So they have to answer to that themselves. The more you can give them, like even bullet points or saying like, this is why, this is how it connects to this strategic goal. I mean, the more that you can do that, the better. Even having students at the table. But you have to link it to how does that link to this strategic goal? Get that, I mean, all of them, all of our campuses have strategic goals and plans and missions and things like that. Link it to those missions, link it to the strategic goals, and therefore it can be at least argued, supported when it goes up for review from Board of Trustees, from the county, from things like that, if it's linked. And not that because this is our mission, I mean, our mission is, you know, to democratize, you know, higher ed and things like that. That's not going to sell. That's not going to sell it. What's going to sell it is it links to workforce development. It links to access. It links to enrollment. And in the back of your head, you're just like, we're turning our students into empowered citizens. But if you say that to administration, they're like, okay, that's nice. I'll give you $1,000, but that's about it. You know, maybe 500. But if you link it to workforce development, they already have $1 million going into that.
Verdis, we have a question. A student this week commented her shock and disappointment that we are still talking about race. How would you have addressed this comment? A book that I'm working with is Turning to One Another by Margaret Wheatley. It addresses some of these issues by exploring what a conversation actually is and what it means to listen to one another.
You don't want to hear me answer that question. I mean, because I'm in a different environment than being in a classroom. If I were in a classroom, I probably would answer it in a more nuanced, more open and understanding way. Right now, I don't have patience for people who are saying that, you know, why are we still talking about race? Get over it. You know, I don't have patience for it. I will say that's the problem. That's the problem. And so that's why we're going to continue talking about it until you know, justice flows down like water, and you know, until that dream that, you know, a lot of our ancestors, all of our ancestors have been dreaming about freedom for all and justice for all is a reality. We have to talk about race. I'm sorry. And so that, I mean, again, but if I was a classroom and if, I mean, depending on the situation and I mean, I would say it in a nicer way, but I would still say it like that. That's just where I come from. I'm sorry. And you know, that's my New Yorker talking, but you know, you guys are California, so they can handle it.
So Verdis, we have another question. What is a metaphor or image that comes to mind when you think about this kind of network? If you could show me a picture, what is the example of speaking their language? And I think the question is going back to the previous idea of having a college, or excuse me, a nationwide kind of network.
Okay. The network would look like, so nationally, we could have like webinars and things like that, but really, spaces for people to, in other words, like maybe like once a month, have like a 2-hour, you know, session where something is presented, where or people can come together over an issue and be put into breakout rooms, and share and things of that nature. That's virtually. People can share some of their best practices on their campuses that they found most helpful, and then, you know, talk about that and virtually, but then have a space even with listservs, that if someone sees an article and things, or something that they want to lift up, can be sent to this listserv, so that people can be getting resources and things of that nature. Teams of people collaborating, saying that that your research of what's going on fits in with mine. Let's make sure that we that community colleges are represented at this conference, at that conference, at this conference. Who wants to collaborate on a workshop together for community colleges at this conference, making sure that those spaces and those opportunities are happening at some of these national conferences, even regional conferences, that a lot of times we go to and no one is there from community colleges. No one is on stage from community colleges. There are no workshops or no sessions from community colleges. Make sure that those are that those are happening. The other most important thing is, I think, resource sharing. So a space where there is, you know, reading lists that speak to community colleges. If there is no resources coming out for community colleges, making sure that that is happening. So publishing, publishing for community colleges. We just came out with a publication a few months ago, and I'm not even sure if any of you know about it. It's called Community Colleges for Democracy, aligning community engagement, civic engagement with institutional priorities. Patty has a chapter in that. I have an introduction, and I'm not sure if a lot of people even know that it exists, and it is free. So it's just, making sure that things like that do not fall through the cracks, but that you're getting, oh yeah, Community Colleges for Democracy. It's on the Campus Compact website. But if you're not a part of the Campus Compact network, how do you know about it? Excuse the old grandfather or grandmother. I'm not sure which one that is, Pac. But I think without a national network, without those being disseminated. In other words, I see California, like Northern California, having its own space, Southern California having its own space, but tied to a national network for people from Texas, people from New York, people from, and so that the regional issues are not falling through the cracks either. So that's happening. How can this be done? Let's get to the table and let's map it out. Let's draw it out, because it hasn't been done before like this.
And Verdis, we're going to take one more question. I'm going to actually try and combine a couple here. We have one person has asked, when we're discussing internships, professional development, and American themed type workshops, is this civic engagement? And then combining this with, is reading newspapers, magazines part of civic engagement? Students have shared that they get their news from social media. So again, sort of, what are the activities that we can look at on a campus with regard to civic engagement, and then sort of where students can go to find information.
Yeah, just reading newspapers and things like that is stuff that you learn in elementary school. To just, get in the habit of reading newspapers and things like that, to critically read, to read with a questioning, critical mind, and to know how to vet sources is what is learned and taught in our classes. and should be and also, but shown how to apply that to social media, how to apply that to, because anyone can just put up a website. I can put up a website right now and have my blog and and things like that. But if we are not teaching to look and see who wrote, who's the author, what is their background, what else have they written, who is supporting this website? Is it partisan? Is it nonpartisan? Can you find this somewhere else? Is this plagiarized? Because there are no checks and balances on the internet. People are plagiarizing left and right. So how do you vet that and things like that? Librarians are crucial right now because they have all of this information. They have all these techniques. And sometimes it's just inviting the librarian to your class to be like, this is where the resources are. This is the lab guides that have media literacy. Yes. So that is civic learning. Absolutely. Civic media literacy is civic learning. But just reading and not questioning and not vetting and not analyzing and not deliberating and not discussing that amongst peers is not civic learning.
All right.
In
Well,
my
I
opinion.
want to, pardon me?
In my opinion.
I'm sorry,
my
Verdis.
opinion.
Well, I know we're just a little bit after 12 right now, and we're going to move into the workshop component of the presentation that we hope all of you can continue to be on for the second hour. We know that Verdis has to leave here, but I wanted to just again thank you, Verdis, for taking the time to talk about democracy and civic engagement within our community college system, our systems. I think it's important that we hear, obviously, from a national expert, and we really do thank you for taking the time to join us today.
It was an absolute pleasure, and if I didn't have a new kitten that I have to see about, I would join you. And I just got this kitten, and he's like a little thing about size of my shoe, and he's been alone for about 3 hours now. So I'm like, let me make sure he's okay. But feel free to email me and keep the conversations going. If you're interested in creating a regional, show us the. I'm not home right now. That's why I'm like I gotta go. I'm in a church in Vermont right now. But yeah, next time definitely. And if you're interested in having that conversation or creating some regional thing that can align with a national group or network that doesn't charge membership and things like that, let me know. And maybe we can get some pockets going and connect those pockets and grow this movement. 4 years are welcome as well.
All right. Thank you so very much, Verdis.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.